bear good fruit in due time.
Fourth oral question, Lord Berkeley.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the way we are operating our railways is not currently financially sustainable. It is unfair to continue to ask taxpayers to foot the bill, which is why reforms are essential. Therefore, it is only right we work with operators to review whether the current service delivers the best possible value for money. However, no decisions have been taken.
To the Minister for that answer. She'll be aware that I think most train operators already have Wi-Fi in all their trains for management and revenue purposes. So could you explain to the House how much money would be saved by the Treasury if they removed access to Wi-Fi from the passengers?
I think I will revert back to where I started on this, is that no decisions have been taken. What we have asked to do as part of the business planning process is we've asked the train operating companies to look again at the services provided and to come up with a business case which sets out the benefits to passengers and the costs of providing that service. However, I would say the usage of Wi-Fi on trains is actually quite low. It is available from all train operating companies, but is not available on all trains.
One of the reasons that Wi-Fi on trains is perhaps a little bit low, as my noble friend says, is because it's so hit and miss. I've been involved in an energetic correspondence with Mr. Mark Hopwood, the Managing Director of GWR. I say energetic on my part, less energetic perhaps on his. An acknowledgement would be a start, an answer would be even better. But the truth is, we have a terrible problem in this country with productivity, and dead time is train time. You can get Wi-Fi on a plane, you can get Wi-Fi on a boat. Surely you should be able to get reliable Wi-Fi on trains. And if the problem is with Network Rail, then we really do need to look at the relationship we have with the train operators and with Network Rail and the whole infrastructure.
Yeah. The Wi-Fi on trains is usually running off the same sort of 4G and 5G system that my noble friend will have on his smartphone. And so sometimes there can be reliability issues. It also depends on how many people are actually using the Wi-Fi on the train. It is there for usage for email and other low data usage requirements. It's not really there for streaming. However, I do accept that sometimes the bandwidth can be a little bit challenging.
My Lords, UK rail passengers already suffer the most expensive rail fares in Europe. Surely they should expect to receive the basics, a seat, working toilets, catering, but too often this isn't the case, even on long journeys. Now the government's planning to advise train operators to remove Wi-Fi, so passengers won't be able to use their journey time to work. Is the government stuck in the 19th century? Can the noble Baroness, the Minister, tell us when Her Majesty's government will recognise that to tackle the climate emergency, we need better public transport, not worse?
Yeah. And of course, the government regularly surveys passengers to find out what it is that they really appreciate about the railways: reliability, good services, punctuality, clean services. Actually, Wi-Fi is very low down on the list of priorities. However, as I can only say what the evidence actually is from asking passengers. However, what I am saying is that we have asked the train operating companies to look at the provision of Wi-Fi and to establish a business case which sets out the benefits to passengers, how much they need it, those who perhaps are unable to use a smartphone on 4G or 5G, for example, and then to revert.
Would my noble friend take this as a response to her survey? For those of us who purchase our tickets electronically, they require Wi-Fi to both board the train and travel on the train. How am I going to be permitted legally to travel if there is no Wi-Fi to demonstrate I have purchased a ticket?
I would hope that the noble lady will have got the ticket in the wallet on her phone, because she will have needed it to go through the station anyway. It is the case that free Wi-Fi will remain available at stations, and as I say, no decisions have been taken. We have asked the train operating companies to prepare business cases.
unreliable Avanti trains, how will I be able to let the whip's office know that I'll be missing a 3-line whip at any occasion? Isn't this another example of the pettifogging interference in the railway industry by civil servants, many of whom know nothing about the railway industry but love playing trains in their spare time? And isn't this yet another example of those in her department who know the price of everything and the value of nothing?
I, for one, would be very disappointed if the noble lord was unable to vote. However, taking the issue of where the government is at the moment, prior to the pandemic, there was no need for any subsidy in terms of operating the railways, zero subsidy, so the revenues match the costs. Since the pandemic, noble lords will all know that revenues have fallen, and actually some revenues have shifted to the weekend and more leisure travel. So we are in a situation that last year the taxpayer had to subsidise the trains to the tune of £2.85 billion. My lords, that is unsustainable. What we do have to do to be a responsible government is to look at all elements of our train services to ensure that they match demand and that the services that we are providing and the facilities thereon meet the needs of passengers.
Lords, the noble lady, the Minister, frequently tells us that the taxpayer can't be expected to subsidise the railways because relatively few people use the railways. Does the government acknowledge that we all benefit, every single one of us, from the use of the railways, because each train that travels carries many hundreds of passengers who would otherwise be clogging up our already congested roads?
I don't think I can necessarily disagree with the noble lady. However, that's a very sort of absolutionist approach, and I think there is some balance to be had here. And the noble lady says that the government is not willing to subsidise the railway. The government already does. As I've said, there's £2.85 billion going in for the services, but as I mentioned earlier this week, there's £44.1 billion going into Control Period 7, which I believe is the highest ever, and that it covers all of the elements of the renewals, the maintenance, and the network rail operations. So that element of it is very significant. That's nearly £9 billion a year that the government spends, and then in addition a further £2.8 billion on subsidising the services.
The Minister says that no final decision has been taken. But is she trying to persuade the House that the government no longer thinks, in the 21st century in which we live, that Wi-Fi should count as an essential service for those of us who use the railways?
Well, I think that the proof is in the pudding. Between 10 and 20% of people on trains ever use the Wi-Fi. Most people nowadays actually use 4 and 5G networks.
The noble Baroness links the unavailability of Wi-Fi to the unavailability of 4G and 5G in the areas in which the trains are travelling. So do you directly link the failure of the trains to provide Wi-Fi to the failure of Project Gigabit?
If I knew what Project Gigabit is, I would actually be able to answer the noble lord's question. However, I will write to him and find out. What I would say, though, is that if there are not spots for 4G and 5G, no spots, what should we call them? Wherever... Yes, thank you. Wherever there is unavailability of 4G and 5G, that is something we really should look at and ensure that train travellers can use those networks with reliability.
The noble lady, my lords. My lords, the noble lady, the Minister, has a number of times referred to people using their own 4G or 5G contracts instead. But of course, people who have to really watch their costs in the cost of living crisis are very likely to have capped contracts where the amount of 4 or 5G they use is limited. Given the eye-watering cost already of rail fares and the fact that if you get Wi-Fi, that means you're not using that scarce resource that you have in your 4 or 5G contract, isn't this actually pricing even more people off the railways and making the service only available to the rich?
As I have said many times, there will be business cases drawn up by the train operating companies, and of course those considerations will be top of mind.
Let Lord Berkeley and the House know just what saving would be made if it was withdrawn. and what alternatives might be available to keep it running?
Yeah.
Well, of course, I can't say that at the moment because there is no plan to completely withdraw all Wi-Fi from across the network. That's the whole point. However, once the business cases have been done and there is an agreement as to which Wi-Fi might continue and which might not, and one might assume that it would be a prerequisite on longer journeys, but I'm not going to prejudge the outcome of the business cases. At that stage, we will have a better idea of the future economics.
My Lords, that concludes oral